Coming up on this episode of Fresh Dev, I am thirsty for knowledge on creating custom shortcodes in my WordPress plugin.
And I am parched from talking about it.
Hello everyone, welcome to Fresh Dev. I'm your host Dan.
And I'm Scott.
So what is Fresh Dev, Scott? Fresh Dev is your look at sort of an introductory level coding and kind of processes for coding, and a look at the back end of WordPress for your own web design interests.
That's right.
Subscribe to us.
What's that?
Subscribe to us. How are we going to do that?
How do you do that? Yeah.
We're going to go to Slocum Studio on YouTube, and we're going to click on the big red subscribe button. Or you can subscribe to our blog with all of our great blog content that we have to follow up these wonderful discussions on video. And that's at slocumstudio.com/subscribe. All right, Scott, where did we leave off?
Sweet. We are continuing our plugin development series here. Last week, we talked about kind of sprucing up, enhancing the design of your options panel.
I believe you put it as making it sexy.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Today, we're going to talk about custom shortcodes.
Awesome.
Why might we want to add a custom shortcode here?
So that shortcode is like those bracket things, right, that I put on my post and my page?
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, so like when you insert a gallery or
Right.
maybe a Gravity Forms, if you've used Gravity Forms before,
Right.
you see the little square brackets
Right.
and then there's like a tag name in the middle.
Right.
That's what we're going to be creating.
So if I'm kind of a novice to sort of web designer, I buy, a plugin or something from somebody, I want to be able to just take my page or my new post, and I want to be able to just, in the case of our share buttons plugin we're looking at here, I want to be able to just say, listen, right here on my page, I want to put shortcode, my button, and shortcode. That way when I preview it or when I eventually publish my page, I can actually see my social media buttons right there, exactly where I put them in the text of my page.
That's right. So in the case of our share button, just to elaborate a little bit more, our plugin, the buttons will still be output at the bottom of the content like we've been doing in the
Right, we talked about that a couple episodes ago with applying filters and action hooks and stuff like that.
That's right. Yep. So now we're giving the option, as Dan said, users can place this shortcode anywhere in their content. So let's say you're like a marketer and you really want people to share your post, or anybody with a blog. You can put this shortcode anywhere in the post. It's going to output these share buttons, and that way the users have another way, or they can see your share buttons, and they're maybe more apt to share the page instantly rather than going all the way to the bottom, and just gives them another opportunity to get the content out there.
Awesome. And I guess my question to you is sort of, when we were talking about filters and things like that, we got to the position where we had to make them unique, because if we didn't make them unique, these hooks and filters, what would happen is they might collide with other hooks and filters on other plugins. How does that work with the shortcodes?
That's correct. And actually, yes, it's very similar on shortcodes. You do want to prefix your shortcodes. The reason being is, let's say, again, going back to our share plugin example, our share buttons, let's say you create a shortcode called share buttons. Well, let's say there's another plugin out there, most likely there is, that has a shortcode called share buttons. What's going to happen is you're going to run into a conflict, and if a user has both of your plugin or our plugin and that other one installed, whose share buttons are going to get output? How's that going to work? WordPress kind of, there'll be a collision. There'll be definitely a conflict with that. So we want to prefix. So in our case, we work at Slocum Design Studio, so we'll use the SDS prefix.
Cool. Do you have like so are they, other than that, like other than the naming, do they function at all similarly to those hooks and filters from before? They kind of keep it.
It does function similar to filters.
Okay.
Yep. So if you recall back a couple episodes ago, we talked about filters. Filters let you modify content in some specific way, whatever you might want to do with that content. When you're applying a filter, if you're creating a custom filter, you specify the tag, and then you specify what content the developer can modify. This case, it's pretty similar. The function we have, though, is called add shortcode. And this takes in a shortcode name and then a callback. The shortcode name is going to be what we just talked about, SDS _ share _ buttons. And the callback is going to be a function, or rather string name for the function that actually outputs the shortcode. So again, you want to make sure you prefix your shortcodes. That's definitely a recommended idea from us.
Right, to avoid the collision happening again, yeah.
Yep. And you get 3 different parameters that are passed to your callback function. The first one's called attributes, or ats for short, and it's basically an associative array of the attributes that the user may have specified. Now, our shortcode is just going to be the shortcode. We're not going to take in any attributes, no parameters, nothing like that. But you could go a little bit more advanced, and you could take in some attributes, and you could use these attributes in the output of your shortcode.
Okay, so similarly to the hooks and filters and stuff, there are a lot of variables in there that you can tweak, but you don't have to, and they're always sort of defaults that WordPress will go back to if need be.
Yes, except for the defaults. If you don't specify any, then there just won't be any attributes.
Won't be any attributes at all. But these specifically with like the ats and the content and stuff like that, it's going to be.
Yes, these 3 ats or attributes. Content is if you were creating a shortcode that had like an opening shortcode and an ending shortcode.
Okay, like an end shortcode thing. Okay, yeah.
Kind of like in HTML, Dan, when you're opening a tag and you close a tag. You can actually have an opening shortcode, and then the closing shortcode can have a / and then in this case, you would get the content that was passed in between that.
Right, and that way, if you didn't want your entire page to exemplify this attribute or whatever, it can only do it for that small part.
Yeah, you could modify that little bit of content or whatever you might.
Yeah, I've seen that in my travels, playing around with some WordPress pages and stuff like that.
That's correct.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
The last one you get is a tag attribute. I find myself not necessarily using this, but I think it is useful. And it's useful for shared callback functions. What this means, let's say in the case of our share buttons, we have a function that outputs the share buttons at the bottom of our content of a post, right?
Yep.
Well, we could use that same function to output the shortcode share buttons. So this is why it's useful, because you can pass this tag in, and you can tell whether or not should we use this function and treat it as if it was used in a shortcode, i.e. Dan uses our shortcode in a post, or should we use it as if it's at the bottom of our content like it normally would be? So we have that option, if we wanted to.
Oh, very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
And now I just want to run through 2 examples.
Yeah, let's do some examples. That's always practice is always the best way to make it perfect, right?
That's right. 2 examples of actually outputting a shortcode. Cool. If you remember filters, as we talked about before, shortcodes are very similar, as I mentioned, and you return data with shortcodes. You don't want to actually output or echo or print anything out. You want to return data, much like a filter, because that's the way that shortcodes work. So you'll have your callback function. In our case, we might call it SDS share button shortcode, or we might use the same function that we're using to output the share buttons below the content. Anyway, we have some attributes if we want to take those in. The content if we were opening and closing, but we're not. We're going to kind of ignore all that. What we're going to do in this function is we're just going to return our share button code. So we will definitely build off of the code we've already used, and we're just going to return our share buttons. And then WordPress, when the page is output, parses through the data, goes through it, and says, hey, here's a shortcode. What should I do with this? Let's put, in this case, the share buttons should be output right there.
Awesome.
Now, if you're creating a much more advanced plugin than we are, you may have a little bit of HTML with your shortcode, or even a lot of HTML. So what you want to do in that case, in your callback function, is you'll want to go ahead and start an output buffer. Basically, that's just sets aside a place in memory to kind of go through all of your code, and you can go ahead and return that output string on that whatever that you do in that output buffer, and it's just a way to help increase the load time. So if you have a lot of HTML, you may want to create an output buffer, and that will allow you, again, just to kind of optimize your code, put any HTML bits you need to in there, and then you can return it. Similar to in the other example.
I'm looking at it right here in regards with this function that we have, this fake function we have here in the notes. Very cool.
Yes.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much it to adding a shortcode. There's just that one function called add shortcode. You pick a name, you pick a callback function, and then in your callback you return whatever data you might want to return. So in our case, it's going to be our share buttons.
Awesome. Very cool. And of course, you can make this a little bit more complex and weeded, as you mentioned. This is sort of just going to getting you off the ground running if you're starting with this sort of design and development here.
That's right.
And getting you up and running with your very first WordPress plugin.
Awesome stuff.
Scott, thank you so much for being on the show again. Thank you enough, apparently. Guys, once again, if you guys like what you saw, if you hated it, you thought it was terrible, whatever it may be,
let us know.
If you wanted us to kind of embellish on something that we talked about, it kind of went over your head, whatever may be the case, please comment down below underneath the YouTube video, or if you're watching this on our blog, comment right down below in the comments section. As always, you can hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We're always looking to get further and further with that. I set the lofty goal, as Matt has informed you, of 10,000 subscribers.
That's right.
Almost there. 9,000 more to go.
We can do it.
But we can do it. And you can, of course, subscribe to our blog at slocumstudio.com/subscribe. Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you.